Hello, you've made it to Al Dente Rigor Mortis after hours because we are recording this at 11:19 Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. Oh, hello.
Sorry to steal your thunder.
Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigor Mortis. I'm Review Cultist, and with me is a special guest.
Hey, I'm the special guest. This is Adam from Roleplaying Exchange. You may have heard me on other Al Dente Rigor Mortis episodes, or Roleplaying Exchange, or just really cool actual play podcasts. We just did a few episodes called for One Last Die.
Oh, yeah, the Ectozoic Park.
Yeah, it's good times. Good times. Honestly, I think it was the beginning of this great friendship. So it's great to keep this going.
Yeah, and I think actually at this point you're probably more an actual guest or like an actual host on the show rather than a special guest, since you've been on the show. I think more than most of our special guests.
I'm working my way up to cast member.
Yeah. So yeah, Ichor Fall has come and gone. We're now in October, as of this getting posted. Anyway, between Ichor Falls and my own kind of jump into like other fictional locations and stuff like that, it got me thinking of like an older creative idea I had, and I thought I would bring Adam on to take a look at a fictional location that of our own kind of creation. So yeah, we're going to be discussing this sort of fictional county in northern Ontario, where me and Adam are going to discuss like how we could put like creepypasta-esque things or like mythos things for the case of like doing like Cthulhu mythos kind of stuff, or maybe even just like creepy horror things into this this eldritch county, which I have dubbed Maplemoose County because Canadian. So yeah, the area is roughly on the north end of the Kawartha Lakes area in Ontario, and it also borders the Haliburton County, and this Maplemoose County has kind of gone over like, this is like its third iteration since its inception back in like 2011, 2012, when I tried to make an ill-fated webcomic, and came up with like a whole location for it, and never got off the ground, despite like 2 attempts. So I figured, why not recycle that further and make it into some kind of a location for stories and game scenarios, because it's got a bit of creative history to it. Mm-hmm. And I'll have a link to the map in the description below for anybody interested in checking it out. So yeah, Adam, you've seen the map.
Yeah.
And you got a look at a little bit of the Google Doc I have.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about locations or like curiosity, like weird curiosities we could have fun with this, or like the cryptids?
I think cryptid would probably be the well, I'm kind of 2 minds here, but I like the idea of starting with the main concept and then just building out from it. So
yeah,
like we're working with a cryptid now. Are you thinking like Lovecraftian or cosmic horror kind of cryptid, or is this more of a just a monster of the week kind of setup here?
I would probably have like kind of a blend of both, because the idea I kind of had working in my head about like the creation of the lake was that it was that some kind of a meteor came down and crashed into the earth, and like that was the creation of the lake. Like that's why the lake is so deep, and why it looks like it has this weird, like kind of like when the meteor crashed down, it kind of smashed in, and like that's why you have on the map, it like kind of splays out almost on either end of it. And I have these ideas for it where like there's a bizarre mineral at the bottom of the lake that's been used a couple of times in different instances, and I'm thinking it might be like almost like kind of a MacGuffin of a mineral, because like it clearly has to have some kind of like radioactive or mutagenic properties, because I want it to be kind of a cornerstone of some of the weirdness.
Okay.
So the one part on the map, the southern part of the map, there's the decommissioned Fenmith power plant, which I kind of want to think that like that was probably they probably tried to use that mineral as like a fuel source, and it didn't pan out very well.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, there is a specific cryptid that's in the lake named Moosey.
Okay.
Or at least that's been its nickname. But I'm not sure. Again, it's gone through several iterations, and I'm still not happy quite so far with it. Like the first incarnation was literally Godzilla, but with antlers.
Okay.
But like since then, like I've come around to like other like I just haven't been able to like find a good kind of build off for that. So you got any suggestions for that?
Okay, I want to go with my gut here. So when like of course we're going to be developing out from this. So, starting with the central idea and just working our way out.
Much like how the lake is the center of the county.
Indeed. So I think I'm really interested in trying to take this like Ogopogo kind of a route with this here. So when you first mentioned the lake and then monster and horror, I was kind of reminded of trying to see. Okay, so I did a little bit of research while we were talking here too, just to remember exactly what I was talking about. I can remember stories because I always like reading about cryptids and Bigfoot and stuff like that. Like growing up, and like these things have always fascinated me, and then Native American legends have always fascinated me. And I can remember stories of a lake in which when the natives would cross it, they would have to bring an animal sacrifice to drop off in the water to appease it and, to safely travel across it. I was looking into that, and it looks like it's British Columbia. Of course, this isn't exactly that area, I don't think.
No, that British Columbia is on the west end, the far west of Canada, whereas Ontario is closer. You're driving wise, you're likelier to get to the east coast than you are to get to the west coast first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think it was like Okanagan Lake.
Yeah, that's Lake Okanagan, which is where Ogopogo resides.
Yeah. So I kind of like an idea of like asserting this thing up with almost like there's a legend to it, like it already pre-exists. Like I'm using another's culture in a certain ways is, can be problematic at times and stuff like that. So I don't know if I would just stick straightly with the native. Like if we were going straight up Lovecraft, he wouldn't take those considerations. But I like the idea of this being something that's steeped into the community. Like your entire setup looks like you're building a Gravity's Fall kind of thing anyway from the Google Docs.
Yeah, it does kind of look. Yeah, it is. It did kind of start off like the webcomic was kind of like a weird horror like comedy thing. And I don't know if Gravity Falls was out when I started it, but Gravity Falls is definitely like leaked in a little bit on its influences.
So what do you got as your basis for Moosey right now? Let's work from that standpoint.
Well, like I said earlier, like again, it was like a giant like a giant reptile or something. But like also, I kind of wanted to add in like I don't know if you've ever like really dealt with moose down where you are. But we like the lake. I go to my cottage and stuff. We deal with them on an almost annual basis, as these giant furred behemoths like descend out of the water when because they swim across the lake, or they just swim across lakes to get where they need to go to avoid people, and sometimes they'll just walk down roads regardless of car traffic. And we had one summer, our cottage, which is set on an island. The talk of that summer was this young calf moose, which was still, if memory serves, it was still at least 7 feet tall. Walked down the full length of our cottage, of our island, and then swam across the bay to the mainland, and so I kind of wanted to have in like this, like kind of like I wanted to have some kind of moose or like antlered monstrosity sort of attributes.
All right.
Kind of to capture. Also, it might have been the reason why I focused on the kind of the concept of a moose for the lake itself.
All right. So I'm going to give you a gift here then.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of a moose, but I like kind of playing with it a tad bit. I am thinking I wanted to use this idea for a Lovecraftian kind of game, but Laird Barron, which is my favorite horror writer,
Yep.
wrote a short story, or like it's a little short story called Gamma, Gamma. You may want to look into it.
I will put that in the notes.
But it is basically about this fungi kind of thing, and like not to give too much away, but it's just growth in the woods. It's made up of like other creatures and stuff like that. Things that die into it kind of enter its conscious, so to speak. So I kind of like the idea of maybe a Shoggoth-ish kind of amalgamation. Amalgamation. Thank you. That's a tongue twister for 11:30 at night. But of like just things that have died in the lake and that have settled there around this mineral, and it's like built into this supreme conscious. Now, I assume it can move around and do things like that. So, I mean, it could be the moose that drowned. It could be sturgeons if there's sturgeons up there.
Sturgeons are also a big thing up down here. Like, there's actually, again, the lake my cottage is on. There was a local there was a sort of a local legend of a lake monster it goes by several names depending on where you are on the lake, just because of like town localization. But the most logical explanation for it is it's just a giant sturgeon that just lives at the bottom of one of the bays that somebody saw. So yeah, you're definitely you're ringing true for Ontarianisms.
Okay, so you could have and it's not become an issue until a human consciousness has entered it. So it could be a fishing accident, a drowning, or something like that. So when you add that sentience to this mass, and I kind of like to imagine this creature is. Have you seen Phantoms by It's a Dean Koontz story that was turned into a movie? It had like Liv Schreiber and Ben Affleck and Rose McGowan in it and stuff like that.
I have not.
It's decent for. I mean, Koontz writes a lot of schlock, but it's really good. But I would almost like to picture this creature as this black jelly oily mass. As it sits in its like dormant state, but when it becomes active and moving, like you got the silhouettes or like the pressing of these animals that are inside of it. They don't really break off from the mass, but like you can see the moose antlers in the head and like the front of it just like pushing out of it at times, or you can see the giant sturgeon and stuff like that. So
I'm kind of like envisioning almost like how you see like algae gunk, like floating on top of like say like an animal, like a dead animal on the shoreline. And it's just this goop around it, but then there's like bones kind of protruding from it. Just this creepy mass with the antlers like that have grown too big, or like they've deformed and maybe there's too many antlers.
Oh god, yeah, that's always kind of creepy.
Also, an idea has hit me with like this, where it's like when it's dormant, it's just the bottom, like it's the bottom scum of the lake. But when it like becomes active, all that mass that's just carpeting the bottom of the lake, like the deepest parts, it all just starts like coalescing into this like creature.
Can you imagine seeing if it like flattened itself out? It looked like a gigantic oil slick across the top of it, and then like maybe if you wanted to make this kind of a very predatory kind of creature, like it could even like you can just imagine this thing like you're not really seeing it because water's flat and stuff like that, but there's like you see a person come above, which would be the entity, the human that was devoured. Like you can see it crest the water and flounder around like it's drowning.
And then somebody on the beach goes to investigate, and then they go missing.
Yeah.
This actually brings to mind two events that happen on an annual basis at my cottage. Last year, I believe it was, or the year before that, we had a lot of like plant pollen kind of mingle in with the algae on the lake. So we just had this like weird, almost iridescent sludge on the surface of the water just kind of like floating by the island. And also on because of like the warmer summers that we've been getting, there's been a lot of beaches that have been closing down, or like telling people to stay away because of like the water content, or like the water's becoming kind of a little bit of a cesspool, for lack of, because of all the heat. Like there's been a lot more algae blooms, and they've been creating kind of a, not a toxic, but like a, you don't want to drink any of that water for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely not good for consumption. So I'm thinking now, which, like I said, it's kind of a mindless thing or an animal thing of
Yeah.
sorts. It's a bottom feeder. If we want to give this creature a reason to finally become a problem, other than like a human made it into its mass, I mean, and now this would be your gateway to actually incorporating the town, because at this point right now we just got something that's out in the water, and it's almost like we're making Lake Placid with,
Yeah,
you know,
with the
but
gator. Yeah.
so I want to give it a reason to go out. So let's say that somebody dropped a body into the lake.
Yeah.
So there was a, like, weighted down with cinder blocks or something like that. Somebody goes out in the dead of night, just goes over the deepest part of the lake.
Yeah, I did make a point on the lake that the center is like super deep.
They drop it down there, and then all of a sudden it has this person's conscious.
And then it goes after, and then it wants vengeance.
Yeah, possibly, or it's trying to go back to its normal life and stuff like that. So
Oh
you could
God.
even, so, you know, like the person who's dead, like, and like I'm really making this kind of dark, but like all of a sudden the family's consumed or something like that. Or you could have it go after the killer, or the killer could be part of the reason that you're looking for this. Or maybe you could actually play with this to the point that somebody's actually dragging the lake for the body.
Yeah.
Possibly, and then the divers disappear. I mean, you got like a lot of different areas, but like if we just threw human consciousnesses into this thing, then there's more of a reason for it to try to assimilate into the surrounding town.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I could, and again, pulling from reality, Toronto does have a habit of having some of their local gangs, or like organized crime, bring their bodies north to us up in Lake Country, and hiding and just dropping them their refuse for a random hiker in the woods near a suburb to find. So you're kind of inadvertently like not triggering, but like dredging up like inspiration for that we could easily pull from reality as well.
Yeah. And there goes your protagonist. Are they people who have investigated it? Were there other bodies that actually didn't make it into that darkest hole
Yeah.
in the lake or whatnot? So, like,
God, now I'm just envisioning like this like Wetworks team from like Toronto come up to this county that everyone shuns. Because that's the other thing. Like, I'm thinking that this county should have some kind of like bad reputation. Like none of the surrounding counties like Maplemoose. Like it's like just an intense like rivalry or something, or like an intense like dislike or mistrust. Because of all the weird stuff that happens in this county. So the organized crime just sees this as like the perfect place to just dump their shit.
Yeah.
And then I just imagine like they drop the body, and then by the time they get back to shore, something starts like bubbling up from the center of the lake that is noticeable from shore.
Yeah.
And that's like, because that's the other thing is like I kind of wanted to give Moosey a little bit of like it was also kind of inspired by kaiju or by like giant monsters, so I just like kind of have like that, a little bit of element of that, where like maybe this isn't just like a subtle thing, but like literally like something big comes up out of the water, like comes up out of the lake, that like more than one person sees. And then we could also go into like a cover up of some kind after the story has gone through,
And
after these Wetwork guys have attempted to escape. If we decide that one of these, at the very least one of these Wetworks guys either makes it back to his bosses or doesn't. Yeah, sorry.
Their vehicles. No, it's great, and I like how like all it took was us just kind of laying that seed. Now, like one thing I do before because I think we're getting ready to move on to, and I don't mean to just spearhead this. This is probably Adam the teacher jumping in here. from all my old writing classes I taught. But I also like the idea that we can play with that maybe this thing detaches, maybe it spawns, maybe like you may have the actual mass in the water, and then it sends its worker bees, so to speak, or out into the community or whatnot, and then it comes back.
Yeah,
Now,
like these like smaller, like wrong versions of like a moose thing hybrid. You know, you realize what we're setting up for this?
what's that?
Viscid from Delta Green.
Yeah. Oh God, that's so true.
Like I recently listened to an actual play of Viscid, and this is basically the Yuli thing that's in that scenario.
How about this now? Like, so we got unless you have anything over the monster, I wanted to kind of ask you, and interject if you need to. I think this would also be something that needs a history attached to it. Maybe not like super documented, but like for some reason in my mind, I keep going back to like Pet Cemetery and like that ground sour, like kind of stuff like that. So
Little God
maybe,
Swamp,
yeah.
Little God Lake. Yeah,
Maybe there's something. Maybe this thing's occurred before. Maybe it's ingested humans before, and it has
it's had to be put
appeared.
down by like prior. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, you're like spitball off of this, but like maybe there's legend of it. So if we went back to the like you're offering a animal, because like say that maybe like the predators in Canada anyway, maybe that was like the dominant force at one point in time, and like when the natives, if we wanted to just make a legend or a backstory to it, would go across and throw a a deer or a dog or something that is like tribute to this here. Maybe one time it got a person and stuff and like that. And then when that person was like a dominant personality there, then it was steering for a while, and maybe it just goes dormant or it just gets overwhelmed with more animal consciousness. Like eventually dilution is the solution.
Yeah,
Kind of thing.
I was actually thinking like maybe it's like a gelatinous cube where after a certain amount of time certain like genetic material decomposes or like dissolves or digests at a faster rate. So maybe like humans digest faster than say like moose, because moose are just like fuck you truck. Like if a moose in a truck hit, the moose walks away.
Yeah.
So like maybe like the moose like they keep it like that, like the why isn't the moose like being dissolved like any of the other things? Maybe like people, when they get digested faster. So like when this happens and they get put into the mix, you either have to wait it out or find some way to kind of like you said, dilute the material, the dilute its flesh so that it stops having this predominant consciousness or this predominant essence in its genetic material.
Maybe like the history of the town is but I don't know, maybe you could say it started as a logging town or something like that.
100%. Like, Mapleton. So like the town. So okay, the towns of the county. For anybody interested, like, and whoever is looking at the map. So there's Mapleton, which is kind of like the main one, but then there's Port Coldstone, which is also a kind of like a rival to Mapleton. They're about the same size in terms of like they're basically the largest of the towns in the county. And then you have Devonbridge, and I think it's called Hindtail is what I called it. And those are basically the four major towns on the lake. And then you've got like smaller like little settlements like Happy Hex Beach, which is like a trailer park. And farther away from the lake is Moonsugar Hills, which is a like a subdivision in the middle of the woods. Fun fact, I did not make up a couple of these lakes, these rivers that are like poking in from like around the border. Like I just kind of I reworked them. Like there was a Devil Lake near Gull Lake, so I just turned it into a river. So now we have the Devil River that goes into Devon Bridge.
Okay.
And then like Head Lake at the bottom there is actually a lake that already exists. And then like Young Lake and Black River, like those are all ones that are are actually like in the area, and then I just kind of came up with everything else. But it was like a very opportune in terms of like some of the naming on the on the places here. But yeah, getting back to our original like thought process here, where like the like one of these towns, or both of them might have been like logging towns at one point, or had logging in their industry. And so what we could do is like again use the original like that legend we kind of were thinking of, where like the indigenous, when they crossed the lake, they would drop in an offering. But maybe like some of the like maybe when the settlers showed up, and like the early towns started forming, they weren't buying any of that because they're stupid, or they're not in the know of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when they go across the lake, they don't do that, and maybe the creature like it's used to that kind of offering, so maybe it kind of brings up a tendril up to the surface. And if it doesn't see something being dropped in, well, it's going to pick up something on. It's going to pick up a light snack on its way as it's passing. So like maybe one of the people on the boats or on the barges going across the lake, just like a random crew member just kind of slips off the boat and got taken.
And I will present this. Here's what this is kind of reminding me of. Now, I know this is a different region and stuff like that, but there is a legend of a vanishing village around how do you pronounce that?
Angikuni?
Agakuni. It was basically like to do the story. Trust me, I follow.
Sorry, Anjakuni. By the looks of that's a variant for it. Sorry.
Of course, I know more about Canada than I ever thought I did. But basically, there was an Inuit village that a person found that was like totally abandoned. Like the food was still cooking on the stove and stuff like that, which it kind of, my interest in like the 411 and things like that kind of brought me to this. But this is also kind of like one of those Croatan, Roanoke, Virginia kind of things where like a settlement disappears, and that could be what actually happened is when it, when the creature was introduced to, the crew member that it snatched off or whatever, that the, settler that it took, then it just goes to the town, and basically it's kind of like a precursor to what you're going to face in this scenario here. It's like in a dead of night, it went in there and just devoured the whole town.
Yeah, we could have like we could have like a small town or like a small like settlement like somewhere in the town, or maybe even like one of the towns originally had to be resettled as a result of this,
or it just left abandoned. And maybe that like to do the world building here, maybe that's a nice little oddity and stuff like that, and nobody can answer it, but there's no way that people just disappear in the middle of the night, even though there's, depending on when you have this set, like there's records of like
I mean records can be spotty the farther you go, or the farther in history you go, especially up in like the like Canada like is a little bit younger, I think, in terms of its unification and some of that than America, I believe. Like a couple of our provinces haven't even been like proper provinces, or like provinces as they are now, as early as like the early 19th century, or like the early 20th century. So also to kind of like build off of the like the vanished town, you could there's a common thing of happening in certain in some towns in Canada where like there's a great fire. So you could have had the like there was a great fire in, we'll say, like Port Coldstone, and when everybody and when people from like other parts of the county went to go check on this fire because they could see it from all across the lake, they didn't find any bodies.
There you go.
They just found the ashes of the town.
Yeah, stick with that idea.
Whatsoever. Yeah, so like the town got burned to the ground because of either like maybe that's the scenario right there. Like if you want to run this in like Call of Cthulhu, or like just a historical other horror system like Fear Itself or something that just set it in the 1900s, or like the early 20th century, just have that like the town of Port Coldstone, the day or the night it vanished, or the night Port Coldstone vanished, and it was like the Great Fire. And then the game is basically dealing with the monster in that iteration or in that cycle, in that timeline, and then do either the players, or you can have it narratively happen where like something happens and the town starts catching fire as it gets covered up, basically, like
Okay.
the giant monster attack. Or maybe in the pursuit of stopping the monster, the player characters in this game, in this scenario, inadvertently have to light up the town.
Yeah, I like that idea. Like history repeating itself over and over again.
Yeah, and also kind of giving like that scenario would definitely be, or that scenario or story, if depending on how you wanted to touch on it, would basically be like a micro apocalypse, because it's just it basically just is dealing with a town that is getting wiped out. Kind of actually reminds me of a little bit of the how the vampires deal with the town in Alaska, in Barrow, Alaska, in 30 Days of Night.
The best vampires of all time.
Yeah, it's so good.
Now, let me. We've got okay. So we got a monster. We got a history. You've got tons of stuff on the town. I would like to add the other potential linchpin for this, and then we can just go on the outward building of the community as you see it here. Now, we need a reason to have our characters here and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Now, I mean, the obvious angle would be, maybe one of the bodies that was dropped did not make it to the center of the lake and maybe washed up. So you could have that. You could have your, they could even be like organized crime going in to try to figure out what happened. Or my favorite angle that I've come up with is so in the Dean Koontz story Phantoms, which as I was perusing that Wikipedia link for the lake, I noticed that it was also referenced in the movie Phantoms, which you may actually want to kind of.
Is it about? I think I've heard about it.
It's this whole town disappears. Like they drive out. I think it's like in Washington State or something like that.
I haven't seen it, but I've been recommended it earlier this year.
I may have been me.
Probably by you.
Yeah. Well, get a chance to check it out. But like that creature is kind of based like an oil base. So I like the idea of there being a way to combat this thing. So maybe your characters are more working with wildlife conservation. And as this creature has become active, to borrow from your algae reference, there's like, as it stirs around, like parts of it maybe kind of dissolves or breaks off and stuff like that. And it's coming up on the shoreline. So it's almost like they're going in there, like, doing litmus test, like not litmus, I can't remember what, a pH water test or something like that.
Test, yeah.
So you have a group of people who have an actual reason to be invested in a town, but at the same time be divorced enough from it that whenever you're going to be revealing these key bits of information, like there was another town or the section was lost or whatnot in the past, like this is all going to be information that's going to be first time for them.
Yeah, sorry, I just had an idea, and like based on sorry, I didn't mean to like cut you off there.
No, that's how spitballing works, dude.
Yeah,
jump in.
I know. I just had this idea, like, what if where Port Coldstone is now on the map, it wasn't always there? It was over by where the decommissioned power plant is, and that's why that's where old Port Coldstone used to be before it was burnt. It was wiped off the map by the creature, and that's part of the reason why the power plant is decommissioned. Maybe I kind of had the idea of like they built the power plant, and due to like kind of like provincial government bureaucracy bullshit and foibles, they tried using this mineral as like kind of a material, but it just wasn't as fissionable as they thought it would be. And so you got like rumors spilling of like, oh, well, it's a bad, there's a leak or something, or there's a bad thing. What if like the reason it was decommissioned wasn't anything actually about that? It's just they had to close down that entire site because of what happened to the town. And then they just moved the town north. Across, like past the point, or past that point in the lake.
And you could even say it was superstition too.
Yeah,
maybe kind of digging on the older legends. Like if you wanted this thing to happen in, like, say, the late 1800s or something like that, where communication's not so great. We're more lessly packed. I mean, smaller communities and stuff like that. But maybe somebody then was saying like, I don't know, there's something in the water. It came out. Maybe there was a reason that these people, as you dig in, got spooked and just packed up and moved the rest of the town elsewhere, or
or like
reattacked.
like maybe like because it is in a wetland, it's in like marshy like lowland where that decommissioned plant is. So maybe like they used the cover of like, oh well, we moved the town because we realized that the soil was, or like the land was too soggy, or it was like buildings were sinking, kind of thing. Because again, fun fact about one of my hometowns, that happened to a major retail store. They built on old. On like marshland, and the building ended up sinking partially into the marsh. So
I wonder if that thing released like gas pockets, like its
yeah.
basic digestion and stuff like that, and maybe like a gas. All right, so
Oh yeah, then you have like that kind of stuff, kind of
like,
like
but I look up how this is where my mind works, man. I feel like I gotta like preface everything I say, but like, so if you read up some accounts of like biblical histories and stuff like that, so you had the Israelites were taken by the Egyptians, and then you had uh, Moses and the seven plagues and stuff like that, and like the whole creeping death thing.
yeah.
Like, wait, and some people have theorized that possibly, like, if it's event, and they're like, some people say there's history. I'm not too well versed with this, by the way, but like, there's like a precedence for something has happened and stuff like that. Maybe like this thing, basically, I don't want to say farting, but like it's just like it's releasing of these gases and stuff like that
Yeah, no,
are
you've
toxic
definitely,
in and of themselves, and
yeah.
like.
Um, you've got it, yeah, because I mean, yeah, not even just farting, but like animals, organisms by themselves release gas as a after while they're eating something, or like after they've eaten something. Like it's just
Mhm.
a natural process. So why not add it to this unnatural creature?
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the reason why some of that was like moved or whatnot too, is just because like
Maybe
it.
Fenmith wetlands is now like fallow as a result of that incident.
Mhm,
Like there's something sour, like we brought up earlier. There's something sour in Fenmouth, maybe.
mhm. Like, and can you imagine the land's been poisoned by the bodies that were digested in that creature, that it
Yeah,
just.
exactly. Yeah, like not all of it's like down in the bottom. There's probably some stuff that's floated up to the top.
So do you think we got kind of enough of a like potential protagonist hook and enough of a monster history and whatnot? Do you want to? Is there anything else you'd like to add, or do you want to kind of
Um,
jump back on the town itself?
well, yeah, going to the like just kind of give my few cents about the like getting characters into this. Um, I like the idea of the of the water inspectors. It kind of reminds me of that Color Out of Space and
Hmm.
the water the student from Miskatonic who's checking the water
Yeah.
in around the farm.
Hmm.
Um, the idea I had for like characters is was actually like using a local newspaper,
Okay.
like using the Mapleton Sun. Um, like just I just came up with that like this week for the setting. Um, just so I could have like the stupid like kind of out of game like kind of title for it, the Mapleton Sin, just as like a newspaper in joke.
Hmm.
But yeah, basically have like this newspaper crew, or maybe even like it's generational. Like maybe like that's like how you like kind of like not that's like the Delta Green kind of group, or like the Ordo from Esoterrorist or something like that. That's the group within the town or within the county that looks up weird stuff around the town, around the county, is a newspaper, and their newspapers like shunned by anybody outside of the county because it's just like a tabloid. Like it's like the Weekly World News. No one's gonna believe it, like anything they bring up. But they're actually doing journalism on this weird and wacky and like mind wrenching horror within their county, but no one believes them at all,
Okay.
or everyone calls them hacks as a result of it. But it might also act as like kind of like people in the know within the county um, might might take it to heart, or might take it as like kind of like they use that paper as like to kind of like, oh, oh, the body's found, or body parts found near hind tail. Well, I'm not going to be checking that out for the next few weeks because that's definitely going to. Looks like Moosey's been having the hiccups again. Just some like random guy from like one of the local from like Devon Bridge or something. He's like, oh, I better stay clear of that stretch of the county.
Why don't we just do? It's just really a bastardized phrase, but like "Por qué no los dos?" Like Spanish, like why not both? Like, do you
Yeah,
remember Tremors?
absolutely. One of my favorite monster movies.
Well, you got your water person there. That's just like the woman who's checking the geographic kind of the tremors in the ground and stuff like that. So you can kind of have a mixture of both kind
Yeah.
of working together. I kind of like the idea of like the newspaper being something that was like this, but it's also trying to legitimize itself or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, like maybe they have like one of like their like most of the majority of the department of this newspaper are trying to like get this truth out while like the guys upstairs like the guy, the manager of the department is trying to like, guys, we cannot, like, we are the laughing stock of the entire northern Ontario like district. No one takes us seriously at all. It's like, give me some normal news for once, for the love of God. um Something like that, you mean? Or
Yeah, that, or we could even say that like this is from the ashes of the phoenix, so to speak. Maybe that newspaper went out a long time ago, and it's some people that are kind of trying to do something digital and stuff like that. So they actually don't have resources,
that
and
would
they're
actually, that's too real to what goes on with small town, what happened like recently with small town newspapers in the area here in Ontario.
Mhm.
A bunch of them basically got bought out by competing corporations and then were closed down. So a bunch of the local boys from those departments um, basically had to go and they've started up their own like community websites for like community news. But they're all like the former newspaper departments from
Yeah.
like small towns in Ontario that got basically shut down as a result of corporate greed.
Yeah, maybe you can have that conglomeration of that corporate greed. Like you have this fringe element, but it's also working with these other people that are trying to do a more legitimate thing. So,
Yeah.
and maybe they're kept around because they're like, I wouldn't say slice of life, because slice of life stories are like, oh, the
Although,
puppy found its owner after traveling 600 miles. But yeah,
oh, okay,
so
you meant like for the newspaper. I was thinking it's like, man, slice of life in a weird town in a weird county would be really interesting to me. Like live it, like just being a citizen, like living in the like day in day out, when like any day could have something like catastrophic or like horrifying or weird, but you have to live here because this is like your only, like, either you've got your roots in the ground, like roots in the land, or like you've got no other place to go. Like maybe this is where like certain people like end up because they've fucked up elsewhere.
okay, so I feel like if we were like placing a battle map here, like if us like charging across the front, like at this point I think we've exceeded our means, so to speak. So like we've got our advanced guard with our newspaper is like way ahead of our background. So to use this like real analogy, let's pour our forces up with it. So let's talk about like this weird little community. Like what do you have in mind that would be a fertile environment for like this weird newspaper-ish kind of thing to take part? Like, what kind of history do you think you want in this town?
Well, okay, so the town, yeah, that's interesting because I actually haven't really put a lot of thought into Mapleton. I've put a lot of thought in other parts of this, of like other towns and stuff recently, but I haven't really sat down and thought about Mapleton other than like that's where the newspaper's from. Shoot.
That's fine.
Yeah,
The little details are like we've got the big set pieces out there. It's
yeah.
just it's the filler things to make things seem alive. So like HBO was just recently. I don't know why I've just kind of thought about Lovecraft Country, but HBO's just started releasing episodes of Lovecraft Country,
Yeah.
which it does like it's got like a unique kind of plot device. I'm just trying to figure out how we could use something here.
Kind of like maybe, I feel like all the other towns are either being subjugated by some kind of horror or are horror. So like some ideas I have for like some of the other locations in the area.
Okay.
We'll start with that for now. Like Port Coldstone, as it is in the modern day, is I have kind of some ideas for like it being subjugated by a very old, rich family of cultists. In fact, you can see on the map their manor is on the point, and the point is actually on a cliff, so it overlooks, like you can see, it basically watches over the town of Port Coldstone from across the bay, which I have named Cold Bay, is what I named it. Wow. Yeah. So, and the rich family, and this may be me wearing something on my sleeve a little bit. They're called the Hasturos.
Okay.
So yeah, there's something weird about them, but they're able to like basically make things go away, and they've got a lot of clout and power within the town of Port Coldstone. Perhaps maybe they were the ones that moved Port Coldstone to its current location. Like maybe they were the ones that offered up the land in the north to move the old town to Newtown.
Okay.
And obviously, I think like yeah, they were definitely they were basically, I put them there so I can play with some King in Yellow themes, some more of like kind of get some mythos themes within that town. The little community of Moonsugar Hills, the whole community is a cult, like 100%. They worship something within the Not Uncursed Woods, which is also kind of a silly, but kind of like hide in plain sight sort of name. The Not Uncursed Woods.
Mm-hmm.
Just across the Hex Creek or the Hex River, or no, what is it? The Hexenjinx River is what I've called it. So yeah, that's basically a town of cultists. Like they all have like worship some kind of like pagan god, or like a demon squirrel kind of thing. Again, I've got names and stuff for things, but I haven't fully elaborated on them yet, or I haven't fully like fleshed out them for like stories and stuff.
Okay.
And then Hindtail is probably one of the newest things I've added here on the map since this incarnation of the county. And it's basically I have an idea for like sort of we've been doing some stuff on RPX with cognivores.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if any of those have gotten posted by the time this gets posted, but look to that in the future if not. But I have an idea for like maybe like something has come up to this, like to Hindtail, and is kind of just like decided to like it decides that like, well, like other people will say that the soil is sour in this part of Mapleton or Maplemoose County. Whatever creature, whatever thing that has come to Hindtail has decided that it likes the soil there, and so is like basically set up shop to kind of cause horror and mischief for a very small town.
All right, let's go back to our main thing because I got an idea.
All the towns around basically Mapleton are kind of either corrupted or under corruption. So for Mapleton, do you have any thoughts for that?
All right. So I was trying to tie it in with the central idea that with the lake monster, and I think what I've kind of come up with is maybe when the comet came down, there was something that crawled out of it, or like there's an element that's left that, and then basically what's floating out around at the bottom of the ocean or the lake is like space stem cells. That's basically what it is. Maybe that's like, it's like, and I don't mean to be too gross when I say this, but like the thing that it lives there is basically the afterbirth
I got you. Yeah.
of that. So like if you like, other things have went out and perverted other areas with their influence and stuff like that. But the thing in the water is, it's the mineral, but the mineral is basically like the stem cells or the things that was the genetic material that built the things that left out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it's kind of like the since the impact and like the filling of the crater with like the water, like the water covered up the direct line to the source of like the weirdness, but the weirdness still remains in the water, and is like infecting parts of the like basically infecting like aspects of the lake,
Yeah,
like on all shores basically.
but and it's just the introduction to this, and once that's over with, I mean, there's the other elements. Like one thing that stuck out to me, you said an entire town was um, like
Yeah,
a cult.
yeah,
So I'd like to let me touch on that real quick here. Like in rural areas in America, and I'm sure it's probably like that up in Canada. It's just the nature of the structure, I think. But I'd like to think that I work in a school system. And the school system is like one of the biggest employers in a county. Now, I don't want to turn like the school system into the cultist, but I was thinking, like, what if there was some big factory that everyone in the town worked at, and that was kind of like the indoctrination point, and that's also the like where everything's built around. And I was thinking, like, maybe there's like a Carhartt factory that makes like jackets and clothing and stuff like that, or some other kind of factory there
yeah,
in that town where the cult is kind of centered around.
yeah. Um, just trying to think of something that would be good for that area, or like for like something that would fit. Like there's lots of
Well, maybe it's lumber. Maybe
yeah, it
there's
could be
like
lumber.
and then you could do that X-Files thing where there's like
Oh,
something that's in the woods, like the mites.
I was thinking the town might be actually really small, like smaller than like it's practically a village.
Hmm.
What Moon Sugar Hills is, or like kind of like it's like a subdivision or like a development in the woods. I'm almost wondering like wouldn't it be interesting or like kind of creepy, on the level of like, oh, it's this nice small like pastoral community that like they have like a farm festival every year and stuff like that, like that, like kind of like the nice folksy rural town, like small village that it hides like this dark secret within its numbers.
Hmm.
Um and to again, not to pull too much from real life or in my neck of the woods, but maybe the industry isn't like so much a huge factory or like some kind of a factory or something like that, but what if it's like a series of farms that are basically sugar shacks, maple syrup,
Okay, yeah.
that
So you
are
got
using the trees from the not uncursed woods as their suppliers,
all
and
right.
and like the town, the village has kind of formed around that kind of product, as well as maybe like tourism, because like maybe every year or like biannually they have like a festival in the spring or in the fall, that they celebrate their like the maple syrup harvest or something, or like some kind of a harvest thing.
All right. So this monster's going to be a grub. It lives in the trees,
God, yeah,
and that you could actually like it's like a Shub Niggurath kind of thing, but like you have this. Maybe there's like in that woods there's a bigger tree or something like that that
yeah.
actually houses like the queen bee, so to speak. But yeah, you could have like these little grub creatures that actually the trees that they're in make the sweetest honey,
Oh my
or
god,
not
yeah.
honey, but the
They
sweetest
they,
syrup.
they produce the sweetest. They produce the clearest and sweetest sap.
Mhm.
That like
Yeah,
when you boil it down, it's just perfect. And then like it's totally not doesn't have like some kind of like control mechanism to it.
or maybe if it's not baked out of it. I mean, I know that
Yeah,
you got to boil the syrup. Maybe that actually kind of dilutes it to the point. But if you were to take the straight extract of it
yeah.
there, then do you like the idea of the grub? Like you can even
I
have
do
like
like
a
the idea
grub
of the grub.
god.
I like the idea of like subverting. So my original idea was that they worship like, or like they have iconography like within the town, like the folk art and stuff of like this squirrel. But I like the idea of like they call it a squirrel, but it isn't a squirrel at all. It's actually a grub that just has like has traits that their minds can only identify it as a squirrel,
Okay.
but it's really like more like a grub. Like, you know what I mean? Like how like in Lovecraftian and like cosmic horror and stuff like that, like the horrid thing, like its true form is hidden by sanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so when you get a full view of it, it's like it's not a squirrel. It's not a squirrel. It's actually this like it's a squirrel. Like maybe like so when somebody describes it, it's like it's a squirrel with hundreds of legs and its teeth chatter between itself like mandibles.
It's many.
Like starts getting like more and more like not squirrel looking.
Its many teeth are chattering, and that's the squirrel thing. Yeah. See, now there is, and I'm going to go ahead and reveal a little bit of my I'm just calling it old grub in my head right now, but like my origin point of this is in the Laird Baron, which like is a huge influence on my idea of what horror is.
Yeah, I do actually have Laird Baron in my in my Audible wish list right now, because like we've talked about it off recording a couple of times, like some of his stuff. So yeah, sorry, continue.
Well, there's his old leech, which old grub. That's where I subconsciously drew that name from. But like there is like things that live in trees and stuff like that, and like little nooks of trees or in like doors or something like that. If you get an opportunity to, the men from Polak or Polach or something like that. I can't remember the exact title, but it's about like a logging team in the Pacific Northwest that were breaking from camp to go hunt for to hunt deer, and then they encounter like otherworldly cosmic horrors and stuff like that. But
yeah,
you might want. That's kind of my inspiration for the tree things. But yeah, so you got your trees, you got your town, you got your syrup, and like I think that's just a real rich environment that you can pretty much make all kinds of nefarious things pop out of it.
Yeah, because and also it plays on like local area like stuff, because like small towns like in small villages like that are a dime a dozen up here. So like there's plenty of like fodder to get for like building the description of the town, or because again like on the map we just have like the dots and the name of the place, but to actually like in a story you could or even in a game you could really like build this like kind of build the flavor of the town from just looking at a couple of looking at towns and local like folk festivals and stuff in like the northern Ontario, in the central and northern Ontario area, like around around the Great Lakes. Yeah, that it would certainly fit in this area, like fit for this region.
Wouldn't you like to see a human body or a body part or something like it just encased in that congealed, dried syrup,
yeah,
like amber in like Jurassic Park or something like that?
See, I'm thinking that. Also, I'm thinking it's like when they're I'm just envisioning some farmer giving tours to like locals. It's like, oh yeah, here's our evaporator. Like pats it down. It's like yeah, this is where we boil down all the sap from our trees. And I apologize for doing the accent.
It's okay. I'm used to it. It's cool.
Okay.
It's the folksy thing.
Yeah, I apologize because I don't mean like
I don't think you invited me. All right, Adam. By the way, you heel jack motherfucker.
I know. I just like yeah.
It's cool.
So yeah, he's patting down, like he's doing the tour, and then the camera pans over like because like they're high up evaporators, like because they're a nice big industrial like evaporator that they paid good money for, because that's like their big industry. But then as they're like leave, like they give like little, like they have like a tap on the or like a keg tap or something. They like pull some syrup for samples and stuff, and like give it to the audience, like give it to the crew and the team and or the walk group. And like, oh yeah, it's very tasty. Like, oh, what's your secret? Is there anything like you do? It's like, oh no, it's just nothing, just the evaporator here. Just got to make sure you get the measurements right and such. And then like as he's leading the group away, the camera pans over the evaporator, and there's a body inside the syrup evaporate, like in the evaporator.
Oh, I've
Like,
lost. I like that.
yeah, or even worse, there's grubs swimming around a body in the evaporator.
Do you remember the
Like,
short story, The Lottery?
I've heard of it, and I vaguely recall the premise. It's by that was by not Marianne Shelley.
Shirley
Shirley,
Jackson?
yeah, I believe she was because
Okay,
she's the one that did the House on Haunted Hill, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
Now, here's like my last take on this. I wonder if like, kind of like at Wicker Man kind of festival or like the lottery where you have to sacrifice or something like that. Maybe like if you wanted to play with this amber kind of or encased in maple syrup thing, maybe
Yeah.
it's like a symbiotic kind of thing to where to keep like one person is offered as tribute and they're just like covered in this syrup that's usually cooked down, but if it's not cooked down and stuff like that, it's got the larva in it. And
Yeah.
then like they just gestate in the person and then
Oh god. So like they're and the maple syrup like encasement, like the amber encasement, is keeping them alive. So that because they have to be alive while they're being while the things are gestating inside of them.
yeah, so you can just kind of see it like desiccating over time. So
Yeah.
I think we just added up the creepy level right there.
Yeah. Yeah, we've definitely made the community, which is I was just gonna call the cult the community.
Okay.
Like yeah, like I think we've given the community a like very like a very distinct and creepy um powerhouse in that neck of Maplemoose County. Like we've
Now,
got like lake monsters, we've got like towns that have been wiped up and like replaced, and now we have this like foresty like forested like development and like village that sacrifice to a pagan monster or to like some kind of like not pagan monster, not necessarily a pagan thing, but like they're treating it kind of like it's a folksy creature that they've come up with. Like they've got a mascot and everything, but it's these grubs that are inside the trees.
yeah.
And maybe that, and to kind of bring it back to the lake, maybe like when the impact happened, maybe a fragment of the mineral or the meteor flew at that far, and that's why and has tainted the forest and that's why it's called that's why it's the not uncursed woods. It is cursed the woods, but it's totally not uncursed, guys.
And there's like, you could have any number of reasons. Maybe there's not a lot of wildlife there. Maybe everything is under lock and key by the community. That like,
Yeah.
maybe they've even bought up like land like way outside of that just to kind of what that M. Night Shyamalan movie kind of deal.
Oh, The Village.
The Village. Maybe they've just got like it's like there's sections of it kind of compartmentalized out. If
maybe,
you're still.
Sorry. Oh, I was just saying maybe the like we were saying earlier about like there's a larger tree or like maybe like where the fragment fell or where it is in the forest is where this like giant like just grotesque tree is like this grotesque maple is and they've bought the land and they've got it completely cordoned off
Okay.
like to so that like people don't end up like because I imagine also like there we'd have like some nature trails and stuff too because like but they're heavily monitored by the cult to
It's like wildlife sanctuary.
It's a conservation forest.
Mhm.
Like it's protected by the province or protected by the county, much
It's
like provincial parks are.
a rare strain of a maple tree or something like that. Like maybe it's like something like that to where it's like got a historical precedence as well.
Yeah, no, I like
Uh,
that. Yeah.
So yeah, our newspaper people are going to look into that. You mentioned and I think the final one would be the Rich Town. Is that it?
Oh yeah. So Port Coldstone. Yeah, like the way I kind of envisioned it is basically it's my um it's basically going to act as like my mythos town for like the lake. Like basically it's being kind of subjugated or controlled by this Hasturo family, which are basically I've come up with this idea of like insanity vampires, kind of like fear vampires or like psychic vampires, but they feed on insanity and creativity. And so they are, and I've linked them to like Carcosa and the King in Yellow and stuff. At least in terms of their like iconography and potentially their origins. But I just like the idea of like this rich, like kind of dark, insane family that are literally feeding on the town and like kind of like keeping them in line, or like kind of has a lot of clout in the town. So like they and maybe they're also behind a lot of the cover-ups that happen. Like if something weird happens in Port Coldstone, it gets covered up very quickly because the Hasturos don't want anything to, like, they don't want their precious little playground to be noticed by any outside forces.
All right, might I totally pervert this with a suggestion? You can totally deep six it. So, what if that, like, do they have, like, I know you're not America and you don't have, like, privatized prisons and stuff like that. But I'm kind of thinking, like, maybe they actually run, like, maybe there's, like, a prison there, or maybe there's, like,
or an insane asylum.
or maybe there's, like, there's a reason that there's people that they just basically are feeding themselves by porting in like undesirables of some sort and stuff like that. I mean, if you wanted to go really like macabre and dark, like there's a retirement community or there's like a nursing home that's set there, and maybe
No, sorry. I don't mean to keep cutting you off.
No, to give me hit the iron well's hot, man.
Yeah, the only reason I keep trying to I keep trying to talk over you is because you keep hitting the nail on the head for like Lake Country in Ontario. Because so two things. One, this area has a very strong history with mental institutions. Like not the fictional area. I mean like the real, like around like cottage country in Ontario. Like around like my neck of the woods again, in history we have had I think 2 or 3 asylums that have been built in like the last 2 or 3 centuries. And they've been like they've been closed down since then and like repurposed or burned down. But yeah, and we've also have rehabilitation communities where the local church purchased a radar base from the provincial government, that because they weren't using the land or they weren't using the base anymore, and they turned it into a rehabilitation community, like a neighborhood, using the neighborhood barracks for the mentally handicapped and stuff like that. So again, you could use that. You could use like a drug rehabilitation facility of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, and again with the other part is like when you mentioned the senior homes and stuff like that. Lake Country's a hot spot for retirees. Like there's several towns in the area that are they're one of their major populations are the elderly, because this is like where they've come to retire for and like spend their later years. So again, to kind of add more to the horror of it, yeah, you could have like that there's this any one of the 3 or both or all 3.
Yeah, it's a family. They have several different fingers in the pot. Like it's kind of like the whole dilution thing. If it was more spread out, then maybe there's like a lot of onset of early dementia in that town and stuff
like a lot
that.
of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I kind of again, like, I guess if I haven't mentioned it directly, I pictured the Hesturos as being kind of like a crime family of sorts, like kind of they are kind of like the organized crime within the region as well. So
That maybe will tie in with your lake monster. Maybe they think maybe there's an issue. They think that's retribution for them coming in on their territory just to dump their trash.
Or I actually think it would be really interesting at the end of that first story. The Wetworks guys from Toronto, they go through all these trials and tribulations, like, to get off the lake after the creature's like risen. They've lost a bunch of them. It's just like one guy left, and he makes it to shore, only to get picked off by a Hasturo by one of the Hasturo family, because it's like, why? What are you doing on our turf? It's like, you're coming with us, buddy. And then that's basically where his fate is. He gets basically pulled into the either he gets like pulled into the fold of the Hasturos, or they make it they deal with him themselves, like out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I like
that.
that.
Start writing these a lot more. I'm going to start writing more now.
I think this particular part, also because it's probably 12:30. What time is it? I'm not even looking.
It's about 12:35 right now.
And we're gonna get up and play a game in like 8 hours.
Okay, so we'll maybe like for now, like that, we got a lot done. I still feel like there's still more we could talk about, but we'll have to like maybe leave that for another episode, maybe, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with it. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of the main family being more like nebulous. As you keep going through this, you leave yourself enough of a framework that you could modify it as you go from town to town.
Yeah, like I like the idea of like the Hesteros, kind of like being an evil, but like an evil that you really can't deal with in one sitting.
Yeah.
Like, they're kind of something that is just like, they might even be in some cases the lesser of two evils, because they're literally like sanity sucking monsters, but we've got a lake monster the size of like 3 or 4 yachts coming into harbor that we need to deal with first. Or the Hesturos, the Hesturos are controlling the cops, and like deal, so, and we have to deal with this, like, so like we can't really trust the cops, but we do need to call somebody about this community out near the not uncursed woods that are literally sacrificing people to grubs or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So
there's always something more pressing than them.
I think they're the guiding force. I think that should maybe even like their fingers have been in the pie the whole time. So like the people who go check the water, or the newspapers being funded by them, or things like that. Like, they're essentially trying to make themselves the only game in town anyway, maybe.
Yeah.
So as they keep sending these lemmings out to do their jobs and stuff like that, eventually it's all going to come back to them. Like, they commission a newspaper they're the top of the conspiracy. They're the ones that's commissioning the newspaper to go look into the syrup festival or whatnot.
Yeah, like they're the ones who like they're the ones who are, or maybe they're like co-sponsoring this year at the Moon Sugar Maple Syrup Festival, and they want a representative, so they've told their the news, they've kind of subtly told the newspaper to go over there and investigate, check it out, like for some coverage.
I think I got your lynch. I keep saying linchpin, but I think I got a good plot device, something I like.
Mm-hmm.
So you're writing all this stuff. If you're wanting to stick with that concept there, you're writing these real weird news stories and all that, but you're still in business and stuff like that. I think that if you were wanting to do that Haster, like, reality warping kind of idea, are you really writing those stories?
Oh.
Or are you writing those stories and people are reading their different stories? Or is everybody reading their own ideal newspaper?
That would be, like, he asks some, like, like we have a character who's like one of the editors or the editorial staff. Like they wrote a really compelling like article about like the incident at in Mapleton Harbor, and it was like some like horrible like incident or something like that, or like again it was the monster again. But when he tries to address it, like when he talks to somebody like a family member somewhere in Mapleton or even like Coldstone, um, they're just like, what are you talking about? Like you wrote a great piece. It was like about this, and then like that's when the character is like, wait, what? No, it didn't happen like that. It was like this. Like, don't like it. I wrote it like that, and it's like, and then like he checks the paper, and yeah, sure enough, it's not there, and he wrote it's completely it's most of his writing except for like certain parts that are made like made out to be like more like a natural disaster or some kind of thing.
I like the idea that it changes over time too. So it's
Yeah,
going to continue to deteriorate. Like
and maybe that's
even
why.
his handwritten notes are being affected.
Oh yeah, like he starts like checking his yellow notebooks, and they're or yeah, even that could be like the old like to kind of like tie in like maybe like add some kind of like connection with like yellow, like his all of his jot notes are changing except for the yellow paged ones, like those yellow like memo pad ones.
Mm-hmm.
And those ones are staying the same, like those ones are telling the truth, or at least confirming what he thinks he's been writing. And then like maybe like the farther that goes, again, like he ends up like his life starts changing, like almost like reality starts kind of like modifying to kind of like make him seem a little more crazier and crazier, like to the point where like, oh, you've been like remember you got an appointment today with your doctor, and it's like, wait, what doctor? It's like, don't you remember, like, and like yeah, it's just kind of like goes from there.
Yeah, that's what leads you to him. Like I think we're kind of even touching on some God's Teeth kind of stuff from the Caleb Stokes uh,
Yeah,
AP, is soon to be published sometime I think next year. Delta Green scenario to where the more you're exposed to the mythos, the more it just kind of eats at your brain. Like, oh my God, it's Laird Barron again. So the Croning actually kind of deals with it. That's his big horror novel. It's just one big story. But
yep,
yeah, the more you're around it and stuff like that, like eventually this man's going to be in an asylum or he's going to be suffering mental problems. And that's maybe how you introduce the true, um,
the
you know,
actual players. That's when the players show up to the
uh,
scenario.
or yeah, or the least the big reveal for the monster or
Yeah,
that monstrous aspect of it. And I love the idea that you're using like this vampiric element. So we have a monster. We have a monster that has a very human force, and
mhm.
then you just basically got this corrupted humanity of some sort. I think the only thing that we need to kind of tie up here real quick, because we did monster, we did monster. It
Yeah.
feels like we should still do monster, but like, how does this work with vampires and Haster? Like, what were you thinking? Is this going to be like the Lake Hali kind of Haster at the bottom of it, or like what were you kind of
I
thinking?
I actually kind of saw. To me, I saw the Haster connection as kind of being like monster, like moths to a flame, like weirdness attracts weirdness, or attracts different weirdness. So like I didn't really want the I didn't particularly want the meteor, or the source at the bottom of the lake to be like full on Carcosa.
Hmm.
But I wanted Carcosa to have kind of like a tendril into the county, just so I could play with that. Um, so I like the idea of like I said, weird things being attracted by weird things, like a like I said, like a moths to a flame, or like it's like a beacon for them. Like that's why like all these weird, that's why there's like a bunch of like weird stuff happening around this county, is because of like this big source at the bottom of the lake. And maybe that is maybe that's even like why, like maybe these Carcosian vampires um the reason why they're in the area, why they've migrated to this region, is because they see a little bit of Lake Hali in this lake, but it's like the closest that maybe they've been cut off from that connection. to a degree, and so like they're trying to find like a simulacrum to their own like source of weirdness or source of like origin. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I like the idea that this is an outside influence is brought in.
And I'm not gonna lie, like hearing us talk about this and about like the King and Yellow creature, like side of this with like the other like weirdness that we've come up with, I am reminded by the Sinking City video game. Not to spoil too much.
Oh, you're fine.
But I mean, like for anybody listening to us, but yeah, like there's elements I'm noticing between like that and this. Not like directly like, oh, we were ripping this off, but like I'm noticing like little like threads of inspiration or like threads of like connectivity, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And there's many factions in that game, and like it's all bad, and it's just different kinds of bad. No, I totally
and there's different it's like there's different factions that are also different aspects of the Cthulhu mythos or of like the mythos in as a whole. Like it's not all, this isn't really spoilers, but it's not all Cthulhu mythos or like the Call of Cthulhu. Like it's not all of Cthulhu. And deep ones. It's not all them. There's other like critters and things and facets of like weird fiction and horror that they sprinkle into Oakmont in the Sinking City.
A whole ecosystem.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I liked. What I think that's honestly what I'm at the most is what I'm borrowing for Mapleton County is an ecosystem of like creepypasta mythos weirdness. Like this is a place that is shunned from the outside because it has so many weird like eldritch horror aspects to it.
Yeah,
and maybe like you were saying earlier, like where the Hasturos might be like modifying the papers and stuff. Maybe that is also a reason why this county doesn't get looked into like a lot of the time. Like maybe this is why nothing really kind of leaves this county's borders. Like the weirdness is because the Hasturos are kind of like the preservation wardens for this ecosystem.
I'm gonna give you an abstract concept if we do return to this. I kind of like to give you an abstract concept of something. So. Yeah. I kind of like the idea, like, so if we kept going, everything came out the water from the crash and all that. I like the idea is like there's just something that's been self-perpetuating for that whole time. Like those self-perpetuating machines that keep going backwards and forwards and something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's just the reverberations in the ground or something like that. Maybe there's an area or something like that where the impact is still ringing over and over and over again. Does that make sense? Like it never stopped?
It's like the like maybe when it impacted, like there's like you know how like tuning forks, like they just keep going until you like try and stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that frequency is still emanating like millennia after its impact.
Maybe that's what's driving people crazy in that one area too, and that's why the Hysterians are there. Maybe like this is like a geographic problem. It's not an actual monster that you have to kill there. Like you're basically going to be dealing with
itself.
Yeah, it's a geography itself. It's like those vampires of sorts are more or less like this little sucker fish that attach themselves to a great white. Just to feed on like the leavings of its meal.
Yeah, they're the lamprey to this thing's like shark or like the whatever. Like I like the idea of like there being something at the very bottom of the lake, like and maybe even like Moosey isn't even like the biggest of the threats, but maybe it is the mineral itself that's scattered across the this stretch of the Canadian Shield, because that's the other thing. Like
it's very harmonic.
Yeah, like this area of like geology of this area is primarily sand and Canadian Shield, which is granite, like old Earth, like basically old Earth mountains that have been worn down to like plates and hills.
Mm-hmm.
So, it could be like something just like when it impacted, maybe there was something it hit down there, and has been mingling with. So. So yeah, I think there's a lot we could further explore, but I mean we've been talking a long time and it's also getting really late. So
Awesome.
we might have to call this chapter 1
Yeah.
of our discussion.
So for those of you listening at home, this let's sit here. We're going to ruminate on this a tad bit more, and we'll definitely kind of jump in and see. I guess decide if our focal point should be narrowing down like the scenario,
Maybe
or
like coming up with some more ground, like more like fleshed out like scenario, like or maybe like maybe even build a proper conspiramid.
yeah, I think that would be fun. I think
And
honestly, world building wise, not to toot our own horns here, and I think some of it may be just the fact that sleep deprivation and stuff like that. I'm kind of really proud of how
Yep.
this has just sprung up over the course of an hour.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't even brought up the leech ones or the community that's on the single island that's in the lake that I had some ideas for. So like, tune into next time for that because I'm
Ooh,
sure I'll bring up for that.
nice.
But yeah, no, what we've built or what we've been kind of like discussing and building off of right now is like plenty for some game scenarios or even like some creepypasta stories to be or some short horror stories to be written. And I need to get writing at some point. I'm just gonna have to listen back to this and put on some what is it some dark ambient music and just start like typing.
I think you need to listen to the Twin Peaks soundtrack for at least one of these.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that and like maybe the Haster discography from Cryo Chamber.
Oh God, they're so great.
Yeah, I listened to the Cthulhu one. It was just like, oh, like maritime horror bliss. But yeah, we should
I grade
probably
papers with that type of music.
nice, very nice. But yeah, I think we should probably call it for tonight because we got to get up at some
Yeah.
point. So, Adam, why don't you tell the nice listeners where they can find you?
Well, more often than not on Al Dente Rigor Mortis, apparently. But if you would like to check me out, I kind of am the head nut in charge of the Roleplaying Exchange. That is an actual play podcast. Plus, we do like one discussion episode a month. Actually, next month I'll be releasing our follow-up to our postmortem for Ectozoic Park. So we, got this great relationship with Al Dente Rigor Mortis and One Last Die, and yeah, you can catch me on, on any of these podcasts here. We also Roleplaying Exchange has a webpage, which is roleplayingexchange.com. Facebook is www.facebook Roleplaying Exchange, and we're on Twitter at RPX Exchange. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everywhere. As I sleepily yawn my way through this.
It's fine. It's pretty late. And yes, as always, you can leave a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted, whether it be on Podbean, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. You can you can message me on Twitter at Review Cultist. I'm basically the show's main Twitter correspondent, though my other hosts are on there as well, but they're not on this episode, so they don't get to advertised. You can also leave us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's aldenterigamortis@gmail.com, where you can leave us suggestions or for creepypastas, or if you've been listening to this and you have some ideas that you'd like to share and suggest, by all means, send us an email and we'll take a look at it.
And if you want to donate money to his Patreon, so we'll read and review Twilight or something like that.
Yes. if you become a patron in the next few months or after, like as of this episode or after it, and send us a message saying, hey, I became a patron so that you guys had to read and discuss the Twilight books. I will drag Adam through the internet space to drag him to hell with me as we descend into the sparkly vampire level of hell.
For your amusement.
Yes, absolutely. And for our patrons that are already helping support the show, thank you guys immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay, and as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners, thank you guys immensely, because without your listenership, it really would feel like we're talking into the void. So we appreciate you as much as anyone else.
Definitely.
So until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
And I'm Adam.
And this has been Al Dente Rigor Mortis. Sleep well.
Damn sure I will.